So I'm going to be reading from Huckleberry Finn. Just before I do, I'm going to say something maybe on behalf certainly of myself and potentially of all those who are going to read. There may be things you hear which you are offended by. We're not talking about not being offended. We're talking about the fact that we don't ban things because they offend certain groups or certain people. If you read the American Library Association, one of the things they talk about, and she mentioned, was the fact that one of the main reasons that people request that books be removed or banned is that they believe they're inappropriate for children. If you read the American Library Association, what they say is they believe that parents and only parents are the folks who should decide if there are certain works that are not appropriate for their children, and their children only. And so with that in mind, I hope that you will pay attention to the readings, that if you find one offensive or that you like either one, you will go back and read the entire matter so that you have it in context. This is from Huckleberry Finn. Pap has kidnapped Huck. Pap beats him up regularly. We would now call him an abusive, and alcoholic parent. He's kidnapped him, carried him to an island because he doesn't want him to get any education, because then he'll be all uppity. And so we read the following, and they're going to give me a notice when I get close to my time. I got the things all up to the cabin, and then it was about dark. This is Huck speaking. While I was cooking supper, the old man took a swig or two and got sort of warmed up and went to ripping again. He had been drunk over in town and had laid in the gutter all night, and he was a sight to look at. A body would have thought he was Adam. He was just all mud. Whenever his liquor began to work, he most always went for the government. This time he says, "Call this a government? Why, just look at it and see what it's like. Here's the law standing ready to take a man's son away from him, a man's own son, which he has had all the trouble and all the anxiety and all the expense of raising. Yes, just as that man has got that son raised at last and ready to go to work and begin to do something for him and give him a rest, law up and goes for him. And they call that government? That ain't all nother. The law backs that old Judge Thacker up and tells him to keep me out of my property. Here's what the law does. The law takes a man worth $6,000 and upwards and jams him in an old trap-a-clothes cabin like this and calls him around in clothes that ain't fitting for a hog. They call that government? A man can't get his rights in a government like this. Sometimes I've a mighty notion to just leave the country for good and all. Yes, and I told him so. I told old Thatcher so to his face. Lots of them heard me, and tell you what I said. I says for 2 cents I'd leave the blame country and never come near it again. Them's the very words. I says, look at that hat. If you call it a hat, but the lid raises up and the rest of it goes down or below my chin, and then it ain't rightly a hat at all, but more like my head was shoved up a joint of stovepipe. Look at it, says I. Such a hat for me to wear, one of the wealthiest men in this town, if I gets my rights. Oh yes, this is a wonderful government, wonderful. But looky here, there's this free nigger here from Ohio, a mulatto, much as white as a white man. He had the whitest shirt as on you ever see, and shiniest hat, and there ain't a man in that town that's got as fine a clothes as he had. And he had a gold watch and a chain and a silver-headed cane, the awfulest old gray-headed nabob in the state. And what do you think? They said he was a professor in a college and could talk all kinds of languages and knowed everything. And that ain't the worst. They said he could vote when he was at home. Well, that let me out.